Hello and welcome to the Iyer Show with the Iyer magazine. This is your host Nick Vaidya. Yoga is a lot more than breathing and stretching exercises. Some say it's a way of life, but I think that is misleading. I think it's a way to better life. Its effects can be deeply transformational. It improves who you are and not forces you into becoming any particular stereotype. You could be a better cowboy, a pro wrestler, a musician, or just about anybody. You do not have to become the stereotypical yogi. Business executives need to note amongst the many benefits of yoga are stress management, clarity of thinking, improved decision making, better interpersonal skills, and vastly improved stamina. Today we will explore yoga and its benefits with Vish Iyer, who is a yoga master and author of the best-selling book Yoga Plus Love. Vish hails from a 7,000-year-old lineage of Vedic yoga masters. He was supposed to be a software consultant with a PhD who practiced yoga in his spare time, but instead he turned into yoga as a profession. As one of the world's foremost leading yoga media experts and thought leaders, he's further recognized as a combination of Deepak Chopra and Tony Robbins. So ladies and gentlemen, here's Vish Iyer for you. Vish, thank you for joining me today on the Iyer Show.
Thank you, Nick. It's been an honor.
You know, this is the second time we are doing it, and I am keeping my fingers crossed. Last time was a wonderful conversation. Unfortunately, we cannot replicate it, but I think we can get into some deeper discussions.
Yes.
So let me begin with by asking you, your book, Love and Yoga. You know, from a marketing perspective, it's great, but yoga is yoga. It's much too deep. It's not about physical exercises. It's not about just this spiritual Western extreme liberal stuff. It's a lot more thing. So what is it that you touch upon in the book?
Well, first of all, it's really important to understand that what does yoga really mean? Yoga is from the root word yuj in Sanskrit, which means union, which means oneness. And anytime when you love what you do, you get into this state of oneness. And this is how I define love. And being an author of Yoga on Love and being a relationship expert or being an advocate of inspiring people to love what they do, I'm often asked, what's the definition of love? And this is my definition. Love is an ecstatic oneness experience where there is forgetfulness of your lower self. And I will repeat that. Love is an ecstatic oneness experience where there's forgetfulness of your lower self. And this statement is true when you say, I love to play the piano, I love business, I love entrepreneurship, I love her. Anytime you use the word love, you're getting into the state of oneness.
This is so interesting. I was listening to, I forget his first name, but Slegman. He was the chairman of the, or the president of the American Psychological Association. And in the last 10 years, there has been a major change in psychology, in the field of psychology. My doctoral degree was in educational psychology, by the way. So the major change has been in treating people of disease, mental disease, to helping healthy, happy, successful people become more successful. And lots of research has lately been done. And out of the three things, if I remember right, one of them is exactly what you just said, that happy people are those, apart from the other two things, those who are in, I don't know what word he uses, but equivalent to when you say in the zone. When you're playing tennis and you're in the zone. When you're playing piano, you're in the zone. When you're in the zone, you're not aware.
Right.
And
exactly.
That is, I guess, what you're talking about.
Exactly. And now we know this is the state of love, of being in this oneness and being in this zone. Okay. And that is yoga. Yoga means oneness. Yuj meaning, yuj or yoga is a technology which helps you achieve that oneness consciously. A lot of people do this unconsciously. And that is the beauty of yoga. We'll see, yoga is both an art and a science. And what I just told you is just the art aspect, the esoteric aspect, this experience of oneness, this bliss. But now the greatness of yoga lies in giving you a systematic method to achieve and be in that state all the time.
Now, that state, typically people who have experienced will say, especially sportsmen and musicians, that they forget. And even executives, suddenly, oops, it's 7 o'clock, I need to go home.
because they are into the zone. But that doesn't happen often. I mean, sometimes the player is in the zone and that's an extraordinary game, extraordinary performance.
Right.
Won't it be great to have that extraordinary performance all the time? Is that what
Exactly.
you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Because I want to remove randomness out of experiences of day-to-day life. The entire Western world is set up in randomness. They are just barely getting into the surface of how to consciously go into this experience, which is what India became a master at, ancient India. And that's how the technology of yoga came. And that's what I wrote in our CEO magazine article as well. How to get consciously, and how do you do that? And that's where yoga comes in. And when you look at yoga, yoga is a holistic system, a holistic scientific system, which helps you get into that zone. And that zone is just it's a very limiting word. It's got several layers, and what we call as bliss consciousness or a sense of deep awareness. It's got 7 or 8 layers. I mean, it's endless. A sportsman has got, maybe you can say, a basic level of awareness, and he's performing at his optimum. A great master can go even deeper. Okay, now we'll come to the aspect of yoga. Yoga, when you look at yoga, I always encourage people to look when the moment they hear the word yoga, it's like a pizza of 8 slices or a pie of 8 slices, and only one slice or one pie is the physical aspect, the hatha yoga aspect. There are still 7 other slices. And there are 3 slices just for meditation, 1 slice for pranayama, breathing. So, okay, and now what's the goal of these 8 slices? So these systematic 8 steps or 8 slices are designed to consciously experience and be in the zone all the time.
Okay, now here's my question. Being, reasonably aware of what yoga is, a true yogi is not interested in material success, is what people would believe, I would say. But I'm coming from a different angle. People who are interested in material success, can they use yoga for that gain? I know it's antithetical to the whole purpose of yoga, which is being peaceful and being contributing to the world, but being peaceful and not overly ambitious. But overly ambitious people can also use yoga, and if they do, will their ambitions go down? Will they become more, as they call, Sattvic, and no longer interested in passionate work?
Yeah. I think it's a very interesting question, but again, that's also a myth. It's a first myth which I want to debunk is yoga is physical. Okay, we just spoke about that. It's a systematic technology to achieve oneness state or state of love, and it can be used for anything. And the goal of yoga, when you ask it's absolute mastery over thought, feeling, and body, to put it in a very psychological way. Okay, now once you achieve this mastery over your own thoughts and learn to be in the zone, you can pick and choose which ambitions you want to go after. It is wrong to think that as you become a yogi, your material ambitions fall away. That's not true. It's all about weighing your options. It's like as you grow, when you are a child, you love candy. And now you become an adult, you don't love candy anymore. It's still sweet.
But you love your car, maybe.
Because no, your tastes have refined, your desires have refined. You've emotionally become mature, and according to your state of maturity, it's fallen off. The candy desire has fallen off, even though candy by itself has not changed. But your experiences, your refinement, your mental refinement has changed. Instead, it likes finer things. The same way as you meditate and gain mastery over your mind, over your own emotions, your ambitions don't fall off.
They just change.
They just refine. It's very important to understand this. And according to your inner guidance system, and that's why as a quality of awareness, okay, what does it mean to become aware? One of the qualities is to develop your intuition. Being in the zone is also knowing what to do. It's developing the sixth sense consciously, is intuitive power. And as you develop your intuition is going to guide you to say, this is what is going to give you maximum joy, and this is going to give you a little bit of joy. It's going to, you start scaling your experiences, and you start weighing your things and saying, and it's the highest form of optimization. if I can spend this much time, which is the maximum joy I'm going to get, I'm going to go after that experience. And I'm going to ignore the other things.
And the concept of joy might change by itself.
Exactly.
I mean, candies were very addictive and enjoyable back when you were a child. Then you went on to certain toys or maybe video games, and then you moved on to cars, and ultimately Mahatma Gandhi moved on to, or Nelson Mandela moved on to greater things.
Exactly. This is how the scaling works. Now you understand that ambitions don't fall off. It just gets refined.
It just gets refined. And then you focus, and you learn to be in the zone by demand.
It's not by conscious, but it's a conscious, willing, and conscious systematic process to be in the zone.
I would give you an example of Swami Parthasarathi, and I'm relating it. I heard it from his student, although I've met Swami Parthasarathi. Apparently, he was giving a speech one time, and he's a well-known Vedic yogi and a practitioner and a teacher of the Vedanta philosophy. And in the middle of the speech, somebody came and informed him that the plane on which his daughter and wife were flying to Chennai apparently probably crashed. And he heard it and continued with his speech. And then went on, after finishing the speech, into the car, and the organizer, who was a good friend of his apparently, he was totally flabbergasted and aghast. And he says, I just informed you about something, such a big thing. And I can't, I mean, over the period of time, he probably explained that I was taken aback. I'm appalled that you just continued with this speech. He says, no, my blood curdled. I'm just like you or anybody else. But I recognize that my attachment to them at this point is going to make no difference, and I have a responsibility to give this speech, so I'll continue, finish it.
Right.
And without any difference, will continue to do what I need to do next. Fortunately, that information was false, or whatever happened, they didn't fly on that plane, and so everything was fine. But someone to be in that situation where something like this happens and yet be able to control your feelings and do what needs to be done.
Absolutely.
And I don't think any average human being could do that.
Yes. See, that's what these extreme examples, though rare, tell you the potential of the mind and absolute mastery over internal cognitive processes, which is really what is needed even to be a great entrepreneur. An entrepreneur, if you look at Warren Buffett, and he constantly says, remove emotion when you're making a decision. He's not really articulating what he's really feeling. It's not about removing emotion. It's about having mastery over emotion. And having mastery, control. It's more than control. It's transmutation. It's transmutation. It's not that they don't feel the emotion. It's transmuting that energy. Energy is nothing but emotion is nothing but energy in motion. It's transmuting that energy to come up with a decision which is for your highest good. It's not suppression. It's not control. It's mastery.
Okay.
And that is, and for an entrepreneur, that's the key, to feel so good on the inside and have such complete mastery to transmute it. Okay, and for that you need yoga.
Okay, this is great. So this sounds wonderful. And I've talked to a lot of people on the various aspects of yoga. This is what I really wanted to focus on. Now, does yoga change your personality? Does it change your being, chemical balances, and so on and so forth? Because ultimately, mind is nothing but, if you could say, a bunch of chemicals, and those chemicals affect us. Schizophrenic, bipolar disorder,
right,
or mood swings, or whatever have you. Or right, some people have the ability to concentrate, others don't have. ADD, ADHD, all these things are some form of chemical abnormalities.
Right. Okay. Yes. Does it? Okay. To answer your question, does yoga change your personality? To answer your question, yes, absolutely. But what we think of mind, when we say a mind is nothing but an instrument of perception, the mind itself has no reality. It's just an instrument. But we are looking at, when what you're saying mind, I'm assuming that you're talking about the physical mind itself, the physiology, which helps us perceive the outside, right? Yes. So what happens in practice of yoga, and even the CEO article, I offered fMRI images of what happens in the brain when you do certain meditation practices or pranayama practices. It's been shown that anytime there is a traumatic event, whether it's a business loss or relationship loss, any problem, there is a lock in the amygdala. And the amygdala is that part, it's our fear response. It's our fight or flight response. And when there is a lock in that amygdala, there is increased blood flow, there is more neurons, an increase in gray matter in that area of the brain. And the moment that lock is there, and that's why people who have failed once, whether it's business or relationships, they feel like a prisoner. It's very hard for them to venture out and do new business or go out and find a new relationship. It's just because of the circuits in the amygdala. And through meditation, through yoga, we can consciously prove that we can move blood flow away from the amygdala, from your fight or flight response, from your fear center, into the prefrontal cortex here. And the prefrontal cortex is known as the CEO of your brain, particularly your left prefrontal cortex.
That's what differentiates humans from all other species.
Right. And because we have higher cognition, higher perception of compassion, empathy, basically being in control, which is what yoga is about.
So it actually allows you to develop your prefrontal cortex.
Exactly, meaning increasing gray matter, increasing blood flow, increasing neurons in the prefrontal cortex. And as you have more blood flow, more neurons here, even though it doesn't mean the fear goes away, but you're able to face your fear, process your fear without being affected by it.
So to speak, this is the intellect, and that's the seat of your feelings and emotions, and which
it's your limbic system
is called the mind, or the manas.
Right.
This is the buddhi.
Yes, it's the buddhi. Yes, exactly. And
so
manas
become more competent, so to speak, by doing yoga?
Absolutely. And we can prove it. See, that's why it's very important to understand that what you're saying is not woo-woo, or it's provable by science. Right now, we can take somebody, and I do this in my talks, we can change people's emotional state in 7 minutes. And if we do that consistently over 3 months or 4 months, and if you do a brain scan, we can show a significant difference and reduction of gray matter in the amygdala, in the limbic system, which is your fear center, an increase in gray matter and blood flow.
And I want to define the fear center a little bit. It's the seat of emotions, essentially. People behave by emotions. Most of the decisions are made by emotions. Fear of making phone calls, sales calls, fear of losing a client, all kinds of fears, greed. I don't want to call them several deadly sins, but all those emotions that are negative for us are sitting in there. Now, emotions can be good. I mean, you act based on emotions. Your actions are driven by emotions.
Right.
But when you let it run wild, then it can get you in trouble. So that's why you need your prefrontal cortex to be powerful enough to control your amygdala, so to speak.
Right. And it's also important to understand it's just not the emotions. It's the it's the memory of those events, the consequences which get etched. And because of the imprints of an event which has happened before, which has caused the trauma in that part of the brain, is preventing you from making more decisions because it's constantly saying, no, you're going to fail.
Right. And this doesn't mean traumatic events only. It means any experiences that have been imprinted there from your childhood onwards, which shapes your personality, your behavior patterns.
And there are varying degrees, and there are varying degrees of trauma. Sometimes there's a trauma and you don't even know it's a trauma, but it's deeply affected you.
It affects you. It affects your personality.
It's implosion.
Now the yogis have been talking about neuroplasticity since the ages. It's only now in modern science that they have recognized that no brain cells keep on being created, I believe 10,000 a day, and you can re-circuit yourself, rewire yourself. The previously thought of idea that intelligence is static is no longer true. And also one other thing we find is that intelligence is not the root cause of success. You do need intelligence, but it's the ability of your intellect to control your mind, that which they're calling EQ, is a much, much more powerful indicator of success.
Right, absolutely. Because even what we call as emotional quotient or emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman's work, if you really look at it, and if you really look at the yoga scriptures, they're not really saying anything different. They're saying the same thing.
Nothing different.
Yeah, and because the fundamental definition of yoga in the first phrase in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra is yogaha chittavritti nirodha. It's the neutralization of your extreme feeling or your mind stuff and your reasoning power or your logic mind. That neutralizing, that process of neutralizing and balance, emotional balance, is yoga.
Yeah.
And which is really the seat of self-regulation, empathy, which is all emotional quotient or emotional
Yeah,
intelligence.
EQ is delayed gratification. All that stuff is basically saying, you have this powerful engine, but you need to be able to manage it, and that's not the same thing as intelligence. Intelligence is like brute raw. It's like the way I describe it is as Yugo versus Ferrari. I mean, Yugo will never be a Ferrari.
Right,
But you can have a Yugo that runs well.
right.
And so whatever you are born with, you can improve upon, but at least you achieve your peak performance. And fortunately enough, for an average guy, if they could achieve their peak performance, they would be just as successful as pretty much anybody.
Absolutely, because meditation levels the playing field. It's very important to understand yoga levels the playing field. It hastens your evolution. And then you can say, okay, what is evolution? Evolution is nothing but awareness. More circuits in the brain. And the more you meditate, we can prove that there's more integration, there's better cognitive ability, there's better decision-making ability, more empathy, basically being a master. And through meditation, you can hasten that process. So to say that yoga will give you the playing field with a top-notch entrepreneur or doing anything you want to do.
Rest is all information.
Yes, exactly. And even like we just talked a little bit about psychosis or psychological problems. Again, we can show through pranayama, because they found there is this very powerful technique called alternative breathing technique, or Nadi Shuddhi Pranayama. It's called Nadi Shuddhi Pranayama. And it's not, and they saw that when there is, they call something called the RL ratio. It's nothing but the ratio of the EEG waves of the right hemisphere over the left hemisphere. And it's called R divided by L ratio. And they found if the RL ratio is less than 1, meaning when your mind is running, which is meaning the denominator is high, right? The left side is high. That means your logic is going, you're constantly thinking, anxious. And as that digit is getting into 0.69, you exhibit symptoms of psychosis or psychotic behavior. And then as the numerator increases, meaning the EEG in the right increases, meaning your creative ability, your ability to empathize or being in this whole creative zone, or working on your potential, emotional potential. As it gets to 1.15, you are very, very happy. Meaning as tilted away from the psychotic behavior or anxious behavior. So, and this is what has been proven just through this alternative breathing exercise.
In fact, I was reading somewhere, I don't remember the exact details, that when we sleep, typically there is a pattern. I don't remember exactly what it is, but if you sleep on your left-hand side, you're normally breathing from your right nostril, or something of that sort.
Right.
That
and the mind automatically changes every 2 hours. But through this conscious breathing exercise, because the yogis found out that your mental state, emotional state is reflected in your breath. Thereby, if you can regulate the breath, you can change your emotional state. And this is one of the most powerful discoveries of yoga, because we know that when you're angry, when you take any of the negative emotional state, you just talk about the 7 deadly sins, whether it's anger, anxiety, or stress, you have an irregular breathing pattern. You either start breathing really loud, deep breaths, or half breaths. You're not getting full oxygen. But if you take a Navy SEAL, and the quality of a Navy SEAL is what? They can make great decisions under enormous pressure. And if you measure their heart rate, the heart rate is in the 30s. So a calm state is directly proportional to somebody whose heart is really low, heart rate is low. When you're restless, anxious, your heart rate is high. And this is what the yogis found out. So by controlling the heart rate, now how are you going to control the heart rate? Through breathing. So as the breath slows down, the heart slows down. And as the heart slows down, the mind slows down. This is evolution.
This is very powerful stuff. Of course, this is in sort of an introduction to what is possible to get an idea of the depth of yoga, or get some idea, but it's still the tip of the iceberg. I know very little, but you enlightened me a lot today. I am inspired to go back and try the pranayama and the meditation again. I have tried my hands at it, but then off and on, when things seem to be better, I think, well, I don't need it anymore right now. And I
Right.
think it is one of those things where you use it or you lose it kind of situation. So yoga and pranayama and meditation, those three things are really critical.
Yeah, and that's what I want to come back to. I think the first question we veered off a little bit, and that's what my book is about. The book, I mean, it's called Yoga and Love. It's about how to make yourself feel good right now. Because let's say that even the greatest success you've had or greatest relationship you have, it's still on the outside. It's very important to understand this. But let's say the simple aspect of eating. Nobody can eat for you. It doesn't matter what great industries you've created, what great businesses you've created, what great success, or the greatest, you could love a person. I love my wife. But in terms of eating, only I can eat for myself. And she has to eat for herself. So there are certain things which only you can do for yourself. Okay, let's say that's you're satisfying your physical needs by eating. But now you also have emotional needs and deep spiritual needs. And those are going to, so what are you going to do to make yourself feel good right now without depending on anybody, whether it's outer success or your degrees or relationships? Fundamentally, how to be happy at will. And that's what the book is about. And what I'm saying is, as you get happier with yourself first, which is the most important thing to do, then you can manifest what you want on the outside. You cannot manifest what you want on the outside by being broken on the inside. Meaning, if you don't like hanging out with yourself, how are you going to expect others to? And which is what Steve Jobs is saying, find out at all costs what you love to do. People are just saying, follow your bliss. They're just saying the same thing in just different terms. But why yoga stands out is because it just doesn't leave you with a statement. If I say, hey, go follow your bliss, love what you do, these are all still very philosophical woo-woo statements. It's not quantifiable. And which is where I pride myself in, because I'm able to say, I can show you right now through a technique. And if I show you your brain, I can prove it's quantifiable. As your breath slows down, you start feeling better about yourself. And as you're stressed, because meditation is still yoga is at a very nascent, like a tip of the iceberg, like you said, in the Western world, because they're still talking a lot about mindfulness, how to use meditation to relieve stress. They're still not talking about how to use yoga to be consciously joyous and happy at will, which is really the deeper issue here. Because once you're happy, stress will go out the door. You don't need to talk about stress. It's still a very elementary issue.
And you will have a sense of perspective that an outsider has, and therefore you will be able to make decisions that are, the best you can make given what you know and your intelligence.
Right.
So you will be performing at an optimal level.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, and that is the habit you need to build up. Just like you building the habit of showering every day or brushing your teeth. These are all physiological requirements. If you don't do, you're going to start sinking. The same way we also have mental requirements and emotional requirements, meaning in yoga we say we have a mental body, we have an emotional body, we have a spiritual body. And those get dirty as well, just like our physical body. Because there's constant attack of bacteria on our teeth, on our skin. And if we don't cleanse ourselves, the bacteria start growing and we start stinking. The same way, there is a lot of mental bacteria. There is a lot of emotional bacteria. And we are carrying a very powerful instrument called the mind inside us. And if that's dirty, and that's what leads to depression, that's what leads to psychosis, that's what leads to all sorts of psychological problems, because they're emotionally and mentally dirty. They're not cleansing themselves.
And also, the problems of the mind may not manifest themselves in psychological problem, but they will manifest on your body.
Yes, absolutely. And that is why when you do a pranayama, it heals you at all levels. It heals you at the emotional level, it heals you at the mental level, and physical. And I've seen this with my own students over and over. Or people who go through a bad breakup, because that's my specialty, or even a business loss. You start having diseases manifesting on their physical body. And just through the pranayama, which I just spoke about, alternate breathing, people have enormous success in healing
You're talking
depression.
about, it's interesting. I'm interested in going deeper into that pranayam since you have mentioned it. You're talking about the Anulom Vilom. Is that what you're talking
Absolutely,
about?
yes, yes.
What about people who have problems and they have congested noses and you can do it?
Most of the time when there's congested nose, it's a reaction because there's too much phlegm. Right now, I just got back from India, so I have a phlegm reaction. And most of the time, if you're following a very acidic diet, meaning a very meat oriented diet, or if you don't exercise, the body's reaction is it increases phlegm in the body, and that's an indication that there's a lot of toxins and you need some internal cleansing. And that's why yoga is all about holistic living. You need to cleanse the body. You just can't do one thing while ignoring something else if you want to get the full benefit of it. So if you want to have a full benefit of pranayama, first you need to remove the phlegm by eating more vegetables, more fruits, reducing meat a little bit, or reducing alcohol, basically reducing acid in the body, reducing coffee, or say if you're smoking, reduce. So as the body becomes more alkaline, the phlegm starts reducing. And as the phlegm starts reducing, you'll see your nose, it's getting easier to breathe and do these exercises.
Well, I know what to do then. I know what to quote.
Absolutely. So increase water, and a lot of people don't know this. And again, I wrote that in our magazine, CEO magazine, is none of the yoga techniques will work if you're not hydrating yourself.
Right.
It's super important. And okay, what do you do? And I gave some practical tips in the article as well. Is the moment you wake up in the morning, drink probably a liter of water, a lot of water, maybe 3 glasses, 4 glasses, and again right before going to bed. So these are the 2 times, because you've just had an 8-hour sleep and you're just coming out of heavy dehydration. So it's important to hydrate yourself, because when you're thirsty, it's actually what happened 2 days prior. And that's when you're feeling thirst 2 days later. That means the body has been dehydrated for 2 days. And so that's why, and that means the body gets too acidic. So it starts chain reaction. And that's why for all the yoga techniques to work, you need to hydrate yourself. Very, very important.
That's a very good tip. I absolutely, I'm feeling thirsty already.
Yeah, and that's constantly keep sipping a little bit. That's good too. Yeah.
All right.
So yoga and love is about feeling happy with yourself and how to do that consciously.
Basically, optimizing yourself. So yoga is about optimizing yourself.
Oh yeah, and living the best life you can. See, when you say optimizing, yeah, I mean optimizing is a very powerful word in business, but it's about how to get happy, how to be joyous, and which is really the goal of life.
Which is really the goal of life.
Yeah, but even if I want a great car, why do I want a great car? Because it makes me happy. The ego aspect of it is just but it makes me feel great.
Yeah.
And as you grow in awareness, like I said, your lesser desires fall off, meaning the candies fall off.
Right.
Then you just go for I mean, I'm in the movie industry as well. A few years ago, I wanted to do every movie out there. I wanted to get out there. I wanted to do this role. I was just greedy. But now, as I'm getting more refined as an actor, I want the plum projects. I want those projects which will have lasting impact. Same with Yoga and Love. I spent 4.5 years writing one book. I have probably 3 or 4 books inside me, but it's all about having that. Now it's giving me so much joy every time I talk about it. I'm talking to you about yoga. Oh, it's like, oh my God, it gives me so much joy. So it's all about refinement, the mental, emotional refinement.
Absolutely wonderful, Vish. I enjoyed talking with you. Thank you for your time, and we'll connect again on another topic.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime. I love talking about this topic. I'm passionate. I'm going to be doing a meditation series after, thanks to your article. Because of that, I'm getting a lot of requests from C-level execs